Australia is the world's oldest, flattest, driest, and smallest continent, and the only continent which is a country. With a total land area of 3 million square miles, Australia is the same size as the 48 contiguous states, but with a slightly altered shape. 2,500 miles across and up and down. It has a population of 15.5 million, fewer than live in Southern California. An urban society, 4 out of 5 people live in cities. Made up of 7 states and 6 territories, the Commonwealth of Australia became independent in 1901, but remains a member of the British Commonwealth of Nations. When his ship was blown off course in 1616 en route to the Dutch East Indies, a Dutch captain, Dirk Hartog, became the first European to stand on Australian soil. Because of an inscribed pewter plate Hartog left behind to confirm his landing, it became officially known as Cape Inscription. In 1696, another Dutch captain, Willem de Vlamingh, while searching for a lost merchant ship, went ashore on Rottnest Island seeking fresh water. 12 miles offshore from the mouth of the Swan River, it is an idyllic island famed for its unique marsupials, quokkas, members of the kangaroo family. De Vlamingh thought they were big rats, so he called the island Rat's Nest, or in Dutch, Rottnest. A favorite holiday resort for residents of the Perth area, Rotto, as it's nicknamed, does not allow any vehicles, only bicycles. And when you embark on a ride around the island, take along slices of bread for the quokkas, who are waiting and hoping for a snack of fresh bread. As soon as they see you're bearing gifts, they scurry out of their roadside bushes to claim a bite or two. If you look carefully, you may see the head or tail of a young joey sticking out of Mama's pouch. In early January 1697, de Vlamingh sailed 12 miles east to the mouth of the Swan River, anchored, and explored the immediate area, which is now Fremantle, the port city for Perth, 12 miles upstream. Seeing the black swans, even then a common sight on the river, led to de Vlamingh's choice of a name, and the swans are still there. Settled by convicts in the 1820s and named after the Scottish city, Perth is the capital of the nation's biggest state, Western Australia. Although it's 1 million square miles in size, it has a population of only 1.25 million, and of that, more than 1 million live in or near Perth. Old Town Hall was constructed by convicts who left their imprint. Over a small window, the noose of a hangman, and in the tower, the broad arrow, the symbol of a convict, which was stenciled on their prison uniform. In front of the modern town hall is a tower of minerals found in Western Australia, indicative of the state's mineral wealth and the reason for its prosperity. Another example is in front of a downtown skyscraper, a chunk of iron ore weighing more than 50 tons, which has been converted into an eye-catching fountain. Main Street, St. George's Terrace, is linked to Hayes Street, a block west by London Court. At this end, St. George faces the Dragon, and at the other, beyond shops and boutiques lining the court, knights go jousting every hour. Hay Street is a shopping mall, and as we shall discover, malls are now common to every major city. With a mild climate, mid-80s in the summer and mid-60s in the winter, local boosters believe it has the best weather of any capital city. Because it's a relatively young city, Perth has many attractive homes, including these alongside the Swan River and others overlooking the Indian Ocean. The equable temperatures allow outdoor activities the year round, and as a result, golf courses abound. Only a short stroll from the central city is Kings Park, 1,000 acres, noted for its gardens, which feature flowers and plants from the other states as well as the United States. In other sections are the Pioneer Woman's Fountain and picnic and recreational areas. Among the latter, Adventureland, where a very courageous daughter escorts a very timid father across the raging waters. And on the other side is the slowest slide in the world. 2,500 miles to the east is Sydney, the first colony, the capital of New South Wales and the fourth largest state with 320,000 square miles. Australia's largest city with nearly 3.5 million, it bears the name of an 18th century British lord. The intrepid seafarer Captain James Cook did not land near the present-day center of Sydney, but south at Botany Bay in April 1770. A modest monument marks the historic site, and in the distance, the skyline of Sydney is an appropriate backdrop. Captain Cook sailed right past the natural entrance to the harbor, north and south heads, which artfully conceal the magnificent anchorage which lies beyond. The initial settlement was in the rocks, where most of the buildings, including the first church, were constructed by convicts. Nearby is the first pub, the Hero of Waterloo, which is still going strong. In recent years, an ambitious renewal program has restored respectability to the tiny enclave. Surrounded by restaurants and attractive shops, the Rocks Square is a favorite place for street musicians, buskers, to ply their trade and earn a living from the tips of bystanders. Their music is bush, an Australian version of bluegrass, which has established a solid niche in the music scene. One of the central city's pioneer buildings began as a hospital, but is now the Parliament for New South Wales. A short walk away is Martin Place, the major mall in downtown Sydney. During lunchtime on weekdays, free entertainment is arranged by the City Council and ranges from rock to folk. Today, it's the turn of the Lebanese community to present traditional songs and dances. A controversial bit of artwork also graces or disgraces the place, depending on your point of view. Free of controversy is the General Post Office, a venerable structure with popular flower kiosks dotting the edges of the mall opposite the GPO. Open space in the heart of the city, Hyde Park, where you'll find Captain Cook, elaborate and lovely beds of seasonal flowers, chess tables free of charge, a statue of Apollo, and it's obvious local seagulls have no respect for deity. Recognized throughout the world is the spectacular Sydney Opera House, facing the harbor from Bennelong Point, with Sydney Harbor Bridge, dubbed by locals as the Coat Hanger Bridge, in the background. Designed by a Danish architect, Jorne Utzon, the Opera House roofs resemble sails and are made up of thousands of tiles. Financed by a state lottery, the projected cost of $10 million was exceeded slightly. It eventually cost over $100 million. The main concert hall seats 1,700, and the smaller opera and ballet theater, 1,550. Because of the cost of operating the complex, it has to be subsidized. A major drawback for patrons is that there is no convenient parking close by, and because of environmental reasons, it is doubtful if there ever will be. Public transportation is excellent in all major cities. In Sydney, there are hydrofoils and ferries, high-speed suburban trains, a network of buses, and imaginative use of empty space. On top of this underpass, the waste space has been converted into tennis courts. About 1 mile from the city center is the King's Cross district, noted for its restaurants, including the ubiquitous McDonald's, its nightlife, such as the Pink Pussycat Strip Club, and the El Alamein Fountain, honoring the memory of the Australians who fought and won the battle for the North African port in World War II. Paddington, a short distance away, was established in the 1880s and became a notorious slum section. Nowadays, Paddo, as it's known, is a very fashionable address. Distinctive are the iron lace balconies, which came originally as cast iron ballast in ships from Britain. Today, Paddo houses are selling for premium prices, even though most do not have a garage. Unquestionably, one of the richest persons in town is the owner of the factory that makes red tiles. Like every major city, with the exception of the capital, Canberra, Melbourne is a port. With nearly 3 million people, it is the second largest city and the capital of the second smallest state, Victoria. The Yarra River, which runs through the city, is the butt of local jokes. Too thick to drink, too thin to plant, and the only river in the world with an octane rating. The busy Flinders Railroad Station is always a convenient place to meet. See you under the clocks at Flinders. The busiest shopping street in the Central District is Burke, and at the other end, the Parliament of Victoria. A source of pride to Melbourneites is that they have the only extensive tram system operating in a major city. Not only does it furnish low-cost and efficient transportation, but it's non-polluting. Down Swanston, the main street, and near the town hall is a small urban park with a waterfall, an electronic billboard, and a graffiti board. A short tram ride down Swanston is the Shrine of Remembrance, an impressive and solemn memorial to Australia's war dead. Kitty Corner is the National Gallery of Victoria, with an excellent collection of art inside, a most unusual entranceway with water running down the outside of the glass. The longest stained glass ceiling in the world, 200 feet long, and a favorite among visitors, the so-called silly fountains. Opposite the gallery, a floral clock marks the gateway to an extensive series of downtown parklands, and in one, Fitzroy Gardens, Captain Cook's cottage is open to the public. His boyhood home was brought from England and carefully reconstructed as a tribute to him. Canberra, the federal capital, is set in one of the 6 territories, the Australian Capital Territory, which has the same status as our District of Columbia, except it's bigger at 910 square miles. See the stars on the Australian flag? They represent the Southern Cross, the dominant constellation in the Southern Hemisphere. On the other side of the lake is the old Parliament building, slated to be replaced by a newer, much bigger building. A parliamentary democracy, Australia has a House, a Senate, and a Prime Minister, a combination of the British and the American systems. Founded in 1927 between Sydney and Melbourne, Canberra was the prize-winning design of an American, Walter Burley Griffin of Chicago, Illinois, a student of Frank Lloyd Wright. Among the many monuments is the Australian-American War Memorial. Beyond is Lake Burley Griffin, in recognition of the distinguished architect. Soaring out of the lake is the Captain Cook Memorial Jet Fountain. Australia's largest inland city, Canberra, aboriginal for meeting place, has a population of 250,000. And of course, there's a shopping mall downtown. That's inevitable. In front of the adjacent Law Court building is a statue of the president of the local Weight Watchers Club. And in the window is the emblem of Australia, an emu and kangaroo, chosen because they can only go forward. They have no reverse gear. Another government building is the National Academy of Science, known locally as the Martian Embassy. A well-planned community, it prizes its tree-lined boulevards, open space between suburbs, and its attractive homes. South of Canberra are the Snowy Mountains. Did you know that Australia has more snow country than Switzerland? It's true. And if you have snow, you have skiing, right? Right. But it can be inconsistent because the tallest mountain is only 7,300 feet high. Many of those employed at Thredbo Alpine Village and other resorts are Americans following the snow. Remember, when it's summer here, it's winter there. Costing $1 billion, A massive water control project was built in the Snowies, consisting of 15 dams generating 4 million kilowatts of electricity, and at the same time, reversing the flow of water so it goes west into the Murray River. "400 miles northeast as the crow flies, and 600 if it walks, is a fascinating outback town, Lightning Ridge. No one knows the exact population, but 2,500 is a good guess. And 99 out of 100 have the same obsession, to find opals and strike it rich. And that's been true since 1901, when the first opals were discovered. 90% of the world's opals come from Australia, and the majority are mined in Coober Pedy, South Australia. However, the most valuable black opals, or thunderstones, are found only in this area. One reason for the imprecise population figure is that many diggers live in the opal fields and do not register with authorities. Some strange housing, too, a single-decker bus. And when they get lucky, upgrade to a 2-story bus. Included on all local sightseeing tours is the infamous Leaning Outhouse of the Ridge. Another is the Black Hand, a local road directory. How do you decide when to file a claim? One miner says, toss a frisbee in any direction and start digging where it lands. Anyone can file a claim on unposted land. Most hire a crew to sink a shaft to the opal level, 12 to 30 feet underground. The configuration is soil, a hard layer of sandstone called shin cracker because of its effects on the shins, and then in between layers of shin cracker, opal clay, 2 to 4 feet thick. 80 million years ago, when this area was covered by a sea, water laced with silica seeped through cracks in the seabed into the milky white clay. When the sea disappeared, water was squeezed out of the little pockets and only the silica remained. Subjected to tremendous pressure over those millions of years, the silica was slowly transformed into a stone, or a knobby. This is what the miners are seeking, knobbies with fire or color. They are the most valuable. If there are no visible signs, dirt must be removed to get to where the opals may be. But what if a precious opal is hidden in one of those clods? They can't take that chance. Therefore, it can't be discarded. Instead, it'll be saved and processed. The ramp is rented from the Miners Association, which also allocates the amount of water which can be pumped from the pond. Individual miners or their partnerships own the converted concrete mixers. Usually 4 loads, a total of 16 to 20,000 pounds, a full day's work, are dumped into a mixer. As it rotates, water pumped from the pond washes away the clay, which runs off and creates a mini wasteland. Periodically, the mixer has to be pounded to open up screens clogged with lumps of clay. Experience has proven that this is the most economical way to process and the most efficient use of water. After 6 hours of agitation, the mixer is reversed and the contents spill out. Many miners will not allow anyone to watch this phase because they don't like sticky beaks or busybodies to see whether or not they've been lucky. If the word gets out that you've hit opal, there are thieves called ratters who will drop in on your mine while you're away, usually during the night, and steal your opals. For this reason, no miner ever brags about finding anything. Nobody ever has a good day in Lightning Ridge. Behind his modern log cabin home, Rudy Haga has a workshop where he cuts and polishes for his partnership. The first step is to cut away the worthless part. Although blue in color, it is a black opal. Black refers mainly to the hardness and not the color, even though some do have a black backing. Of gemstone quality, ridge opals are much harder than those from Coober Pedy, which occur in seams, are softer and lighter in color. Black opals are rarer than seam. the major factor in the higher prices they command. Any vestige of clay is removed on the grinding wheel. Rudy wants flawless opal, rich in color, loaded with fire. Most ridge opal is sold as solids, individual stones to be used in rings, brooches, pendants, and earrings. Turning to the pumice wheel, Rudy's final step is to apply a shine. In his hands are opals worth $20,000, and the best are second from the right and second from the left. Brought out from personal collections where they're tucked away from Australian rainy day are three beauties. Price tag of the first, $35,000. The second is bigger in size, but isn't worth as much, only $30,000, because of its lack of colors other than shades of blue and green. But the third is magnificent. Fabulous size, color, and fire. Asking price? $75,000, and probably a very good buy at that price. The digger who found this one is a very lucky Australian indeed. The Great Barrier is remarkable. Stretching 1,250 miles long in the Coral Sea, ranging from 10 to 150 miles off the northeast coast, it began forming more than 30 million years ago. However, it is not a single continuous reef, but is made up of several thousand individual reefs which cannot be seen at normal tide. That's why it's so dangerous to navigate these waters. By choosing a day when the tide is abnormally low, sections of the reef usually invisible are exposed. Green Island, named by Captain Cook, is the most popular tourist destination on the reef. Just 12 miles by boat from Cairns, it's one of the only two reef islands which are true coral cays and have overnight accommodations. The other is Heron Island, at the southern end of the reef and 50 miles offshore, reached either by boat or helicopter. From the air, Heron looks like a teardrop of green in the blue coral sea. 1 square mile in area, it got its name logically. Heron's nest on the island. If possible, schedule a visit during a low tide, which is ideal for walking the reef and viewing the living coral and marine life. Spring, August, and September has the lowest tides in conjunction with a new or full moon. At a very low tide, the coral is either just above the surface of the water or very close to it, and the colors are most brilliant. More than 20 varieties of coral are to be seen, including bench, brain, mushroom, and spectacular staghorn. In different lengths and colors, sea cucumbers, or biche de mer, are quite common. So are starfish. Clams, which can weigh more than 150 pounds, are unique for their colorful lips. For this young man, the balancing pole is perfect for provoking a clam spitting contest. Don't fret, it doesn't do any damage to the clam. To stand on the edge of the Great Barrier Reef and marvel at this miracle of nature is truly an incomparable privilege. Queensland is Australia's second biggest state, more than 660,000 square miles. Straddling a river and tucked away in the southeast corner of the state, the capital, Brisbane, recently topped 1 million in its population. With a climate similar to central Florida, it too is growing rapidly as Australians retire to their sun belt. City Hall is easy to locate. It's under the tall spire. And downtown, all streets have taken the names of British monarchs. Predictably, there is an inner city park with brilliant stands of azaleas and other flowers. Overseas visitors often come to Brisbane for only one reason: to visit the world's largest koala sanctuary, Lone Pine, home to 100 cuddly koalas. Without prompting, they may even perform a duet in scratch time. Although dubbed a bear, they're not. Possessing a pouch, they are a marsupial and aren't even distantly related to the bear family. Koala is an Aboriginal word meaning no drink, and they do not. Their only menu is the food and moisture in certain eucalyptus leaves. For many years, scientists thought they were perpetually sleepy until they analyzed the content of the leaves and found a mild narcotic in them. So koalas are not perpetually sleepy. They're simply stoned most of the time. In the wild, the Tasmanian devil, another marsupial, is a very nasty critter. Conversely, the slow-footed wombat, also a marsupial, is gentle. Until shown proof, they couldn't comprehend that the spiny anteater, the echidna, lays eggs and nurses its young, as does the duck-billed platypus, the only two creatures in the world with the characteristics of the reptile and the mammal. Lone Pine has most of the 40-odd varieties of kangaroos. Common to all is that a joey will live in mama's pouch until 7 months old. And oh my, how mommies hate those rainy days when Joey can't get out and play. Quite tame, the roos will eat right out of your hand. Corn, a treat for them. But make sure you go to Lone Pine in the morning. By afternoon, they're all filled up. Ah, poor little Joey. He's being overlooked. He's in the wrong place. But that's a big advantage when Mama goes grazing, because he doesn't even have to leave home. He just leans out of the front window and munches away. And yes, it is true, some kangaroos can climb trees. The climax of a Lone Pine visit is the rare opportunity to hold and have your picture taken with a koala. They're as soft, cuddly, and lovable as they appear. In the U.S., they can be seen at the San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco zoos, but not held. You have to go to Australia for that treat. Residents of Tasmania get very upset if you ask them if they're part of Australia. Of course they are. Not only is it the smallest state with 26,000 square miles, but it's the only island state. Total population is 400,000, one-third of whom live in the capital, the port of Hobart, which is located at the foot of Mount Wellington and is named for a British lord. On the waterfront are the Salamanca warehouses, constructed by convicts, where flea markets are held on Saturday mornings. A block away, the state parliament, and a 5-minute walk beyond is the charming Cat and the Fiddle arcade, where every hour on the hour, the old nursery rhyme is played. Remember the rhyme? Hi diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Discovered in 1642 by the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, Tasmania was claimed and named after him by the British in 1802, who saw it as an ideal dumping ground for incorrigible convicts. Southeast of Hobart, on a rugged and isolated peninsula, the penal colony of Port Arthur was established. And at Eagle Hawk Neck, just north of it, guards and vicious dogs were stationed to intercept potential escapees. The most notorious of the Australian prisons, Port Arthur was built by convicts. many of whom perished under the primitive accommodations, poor food, and cruel and capricious punishment for even the most minor rule infractions. Because of its historic significance, work is now underway to restore and preserve this heritage of the past. Tassie, the popular name for the state, is the most temperate state because it's closest to Antarctica. 50 miles north of Hobart in the upper reaches of the Derwent River, the fall foliage reflects this fact. The distinctive buildings are oast houses in which the major crop of the valley is dried. The crop? Hops. As you may have heard, the Aussies have a prodigious liking and capacity for beer. Turbulent and treacherous, Bass Strait, separating Tasmania and Victoria, is a graveyard of ships. Running along its northern edge, southwest of Melbourne, the Great Ocean Road offers some of Australia's most spectacular scenery, which is similar to California's Big Sur coast. Near Port Campbell, the Tasman Sea has eroded away sections of the sandstone cliffs and created pinnacles of unusual shapes. On the right is the Cardinal, and on the left, the Submarine. Several natural bridges have evolved, one of which, London Bridge, has 2 arches. Most impressive are the 12 Apostles, formations thrusting majestically out of the sea. Not all can be seen from one vantage point, but 12 are there, and they are awesome. The Tasman Sea is mercurial. Within moments, its mood can change from serene to raging. Roaring in from the South Pole, a sudden storm whips the Tasman into a frenzy, with gargantuan waves pounding against the cliffs. And it was on a day like this in 1878 when the Loch Ard, bound from England to Melbourne, was smashed against the cliffs. Of the 52 aboard, 2 miraculously were swept into this cove and survived. Those who perished were buried in a mass grave above what is now Loch Ard Cove. A small resort island 75 miles south of Melbourne, Phillip Island, is on most tourist itineraries because of its beguiling residents, the fairy penguins, the smallest in the world. Along several hundred miles of the Tasman coast, their rookeries riddle the sand dunes, but it's only on Phillip that they're easily seen. A section of the beach and dunes has been fenced off and a viewing section established. Not until it is completely dark will they emerge from the sea, and then only in small groups. At the base of the dune, they pause to preen and dry off before beginning the tiring climb to their abodes. On top of the sandhill, another moment of rest, during which a marital dispute erupts, and then it's onward, homeward. Without a doubt, it's one of the best floor shows down under. Reaching home, Penelope Penguin discovers a problem. Her front door is plugged with sand. Indifferent to her plight, neighbors offer no assistance. What to do? Assessing the situation, she swings into action and produces a small sandstorm. It won't be long before she's safely inside, as snug as a penguin in a rug. Adelaide is the capital of the driest state in the driest continent in the world. South Australia has another distinction, the only state settled by colonists and not convicts. Lieutenant Colonel William Light laid out the city in 1836, and his brilliant plan is still followed. It's appropriate that his statue should have a commanding view of the city of more than 1 million. Why was Adelaide chosen? She was the queen of King William, the reigning monarch at that time. Although near the sea, it is not a port, but is on a river, the Torrens, which flows alongside the Festival Theater complex. Surrounding the central city are terraces, which are not only artfully landscaped, but offer recreational facilities such as playing fields, picnic areas, golf courses, and a zoo. Even Alice in Wonderland is represented. Changing with the seasons, the extensive flower displays have led to Adelaide's title of the Garden City. In West Terrace, a bicycle training school is supervised by constables of the statewide police force. Under their watchful eyes, the youngsters are learning the correct way to ride on the wrong side of the road. The central thoroughfare is King William, and branching off of it is, guess what, a mall. The Rundle Mall, with fruit stands, buskers, and flowers from the outback. Shopping complexes look the same, whether they're in Australia or Nebraska. Even the merchandisers are the same. A town called Alice. None is better known in Australia. Alice Springs, or just plain Alice. Often labeled the capital of the outback, it is in the very center, the red center, and is 1,200 miles away from anywhere. Alice came into existence in 1872 as a repeater station on the Overland Telegraph line connecting Adelaide and Darwin. It's a name derived from the fact that it was built next to a spring which was named Alice after a telegrapher's wife. The spring is still here, even though the city itself shifted to the south, and the water, if any, flows into the Todd River, which drew its name from the superintendent of telegraphs at that time. Located just north of the McDonnell Ranges, Alice today is a city of 25,000, growing rapidly because tourists have recently discovered it and the outback, but it's also a cattle and rail town. Summers in the outback can be torrid, with temperatures above 120 degrees, and the flies almost unbearable. The prime time to be there is between April and October, when temperatures are moderate and pleasant. Main Street also bears the name of Todd and is the major shopping district. On it, too, is a church dedicated to Dr. John Flynn, who began the Flying Doctor service in Alice in 1929 and is given credit for opening up the outback. A large boulder covers his gravesite, 8 miles west of Alice, in his beloved outback. Until the first train arrived in 1929, fewer than 100 people lived in Alice. Today, it is a transportation center as the terminus of the rail line from Adelaide and a major trans-shipping point to the northern half of Australia. Most cargo now arrives in containers and is offloaded on trucks, which then transfer it to 3 trailer units known as road trains. Until the rail line was built, Alice and other outback settlements were serviced by camel caravans led by Afghans, who were instrumental in opening up the interior and supplying ranchers, miners, and small towns with essential supplies. With the advent of roads and the railroad, they were no longer needed, so the Afghans set their animals free. A recent survey estimated that there are at least 100,000 wild camels roaming the center. Occasionally, a roundup is scheduled to resupply the camel farm with animals, which are sold to zoos, circuses, and to Saudi Arabia to bolster their camel corps. Strong, hardy, and disease-resistant, the camels are also employed for safaris into the surrounding outback and for rides at the farm. Although we call them camels, they're actually dromedaries because they have only one hump. For tourists, the opportunity to climb aboard is hard to pass up. After all, how many people can boast that they've ridden an Australian camel? The flies were pesty as usual, which triggers the territory or outback salute, the waving of the hand in front of the face. A renowned cameleer from Omaha, Nebraska, Dick Walter, admonished his steed to behave properly because he was about to carry one of America's leading impresarios and foremost camel riders. He further emphasized he would brook no nonsense and was anticipating a trouble-free ride. Mr. Walter, firmly in command, directed the caravan onward. The ride would be the highlight of their stay in the Alice. An estimated 10,000 people have converged on Alice just to see the Henley on Todd, one of the Outback's most heralded outings. Everybody wants to get into the act, so the initial races are freestyle, with all types of craft competing, including one made up of Americans living in Alice. Alas, unaccustomed to running in sand, they came in last. On the coastal beaches, surf ski rescue is one of the techniques employed by lifeguards and has been modified to adapt to local conditions. The lifeguard paddles his ski up the Todd to where a would-be drowning victim is to be rescued. Carried onto the board, the damsel, no longer in distress, and her hero can only offer moral support as the winch operators energetically reel them in. Life-saving on the Todd, you must admit, is different. There are two major boat styles, the eights, 8-meter craft with a crew of 8, and the yachts, 10 meters long and 10 on board. The eights were first across the starting line, propelled by leg power, not wind power, heading for the buoy, an oil drum filled with sand. Coordination among the seamen is essential. The legs must work in unison. If anyone falters, one boat is in big trouble. With its anchor dragging, it comes to a dead stop in the water, and by the time all hands are upright, it's too late. They're out of the running. Aussies have a marvelous sense of humor, as evidenced by signs posted on the river gum trees. In reality, the only place you can drown in Alice is in a local swimming pool. The slickest challenge at the Henley is the greasy mast, a mast coated with grease. Forming human pyramids, team after team struggled to get a member to the top, where bottles of Australian rum were dangling and waiting to be snatched loose. Although one came close, his hands were so greasy from grabbing the mast that his fingers kept slipping off. In the meantime, his teammates' shoulders wilted under the strain, and inevitably, what went up now comes down. Since late morning, a series of heats had involved scores of competing eights and yachts. Now, the moment of truth, the finals, with the surviving crews anxious and eager to vie for the first-place trophies. Streaking up the course, the finalists in the yacht category displayed speed and poise, did a splendid spinnaker leg, and it seemed possible that a photo finish might result until disaster struck the boat on the left. As shadows began to cover the river, the 3 finalists of the 8-meter trials took their positions. In the first leg, it was neck and neck, an excellent turn around the buoy and down the home stretch. But just before reaching the finish line, a crewman stumbled on a big shadow and the boat flipped. Fortunately, the only injuries were to their pride. The climax of the Henley on Todd is a sea battle unlike anything you've ever seen. 3 ships rolled onto the course. Their weapons are water and flour bombs and water cannons. It's all-out war. And although the combatants have been ordered to keep their weapons trained on the opposing ships, Occasionally, they couldn't resist and sprayed the spectators. Around and around, up and down, a naval battle to end all naval battles. The Henley-on-Todd Regatta is one of a kind, unbelievable, unforgettable, the most unusual regatta in the world, and is pure, unadulterated Australian. At the very top of the Northern Territory is Darwin, its capital. Between it and Alice is a lot of nothing. 520,000 square miles in size and a population estimated at 100,000. Take a look at the white pages for the entire state. Every telephone subscriber in 520,000 square miles is listed in these few pages. And over half of the Territorians are concentrated in Darwin, which is closer to Singapore than to Sydney. Seeking the best route for the telegraph line, John McDowell Stewart pioneered the right-of-way from Adelaide to Darwin in 1868. What is he pointing to? The trail he blazed? Not really. Rather, he's pointing to Darwin's new mall. The climate is equatorial, hot, humid, and wet from mid-October to mid-March, and an economy based on cattle, mining, tourism, shipping, and the federal payroll. During the early stages of World War II, Darwin was a repeated target of Japanese bombers based in nearby New Guinea. It was feared that the bombing was a prelude to an invasion. It didn't happen, but Darwin was devastated by the raids. One example, one bomb fell at the legislative chambers and killed 10 people. But that was nothing compared to what occurred on Christmas Day, 1975, when a cyclone, or hurricane, blasted through and leveled most of the city. Out of 13,000 dwellings, more than 12,000 were destroyed. Amazing, too, that there was little evidence of the catastrophe. However, home builders learned an important lesson. In the future, houses would be constructed on the ground and not on stilts. Solar heating is widely used. With abundant sunshine, it's very practical. Initially, newcomers aren't aware why there seem to be so many red motor scooters in the city until they see one pull up at a mailbox. A stride is a postal carrier. When he saw the camera, he was curious and inquired, "Don't they deliver mail in America this way?" The Kimberley Mountains, known simply as the Kimberley, is the top end of adjacent Western Australia and has a climate and terrain dotted with baobab or bottle trees very similar to the territory. The major industry is also the same, cattle. Mammoth termite hills abound. A smaller member of the kangaroo family, the wallaby, is to be seen. In the larger rivers and estuaries, beware of the huge crocodiles. They can be people eaters. Harmless are the freshwater Johnson crocodiles. Because it is open-range cattle country with stations averaging 1 million acres, cattle are a road hazard, especially at night when they seek the radiating warmth from the blacktop. Littering the roads are animal victims of vehicle encounters. Catherine, 125 miles south of Darwin, has another attraction, the Catherine Gorge, a major geographical attraction and Australia's equivalent of the Grand Canyon. A rare asset is one of the few public performances by Aborigines anywhere in Australia of a corroboree. Presented 3 evenings a week, the traditional song and dance ceremony featuring the haunting strains of the nose flute, the didgeridoo, was once commonly seen in many locales, but not anymore. Aborigines have lost interest in staging corroborees privately as well as publicly. People literally drive hundreds of miles out of their way to see this corroboree, In the program, the Aborigines not only recreate traditional dances, such as the kangaroo hunt, but they make certain that their bodies are painted correctly and that their dress is authentic. When the Europeans arrived, there were 300,000 Aborigines. Today, it's estimated there are no more than 40,000 purebloods and 120,000 mixed bloods. And to the best knowledge of authorities, nomadic Aborigines no longer exist. A common misconception of most tourists is that Ayers Rock is in a suburb of Alice Springs, when in actual fact, it's 275 miles southwest. As the sun rises, the world's largest monolith slowly changes color. A striking and dominant sandstone rock, it is 5.5 miles around at the base, 1.5 miles long, 1 mile wide, 1,100 feet high, with 80% of its mass below the surface, a fact confirmed by seismic tests. "20 miles west are the Olgas, named after Queen Olga of Spain by Ernest Giles in 1872, the first white man to see them. Covering 60 square miles with 35 major domes, the Aborigines call it Katajuta, or many heads, and ascribe mystical qualities and elaborate stories to each. Mount Olga, at 1,800 feet, is the tallest peak. The Olgas are unusual in that they are a conglomerate formed out of debris which poured into seabed canyons when the area was under a sea in the Precambrian era 500 to 600 million years ago. When the land rose and the sea disappeared, the canyons became mountains. First seen by white explorer Leonard Goss in 1873, he named the rock after the Premier of South Australia at the time, Sir Henry Ayres. However, its Aboriginal name is Uluru, which translates as all-knowing. Venerated by Aborigines who have a name and explanation for every feature, large and small, Uluru plays a major role in the story of their creation, what they refer to as their dream time. This feature, for instance, is known as the brain, or ngoro in their language. Another is the digging stick, or kangaroo tail. Home base for an Aboriginal tribe who lived in caves pockmarking the base of the rock, its members drew simple paintings in their idle moments, including one of a person riding a horse. Nearby is Maggie's Spring, a waterhole for kangaroos and emus, which were their basic food. The source of the water is high up in the rock, where in a natural catchment, infrequent rain is trapped and naturally rationed out to trickle down into the spring. In other caves, the men conducted their sacred initiation rites in which young men were inducted into the tribe. To climb the rock, it's a goal of most visitors, and park rangers say if you can get past Chicken Rock on the left, you probably can make it to the summit. Among the different ways to climb is the Australian crawl, going up on all fours and coming down on all fives. The trek can be arduous, and more than a dozen people have died attempting it, mainly from heart attacks and falls, which is why the chain was installed, so climbers can hold on or pull themselves up. Very steep in sections, the grade necessitates frequent pauses to catch the breath, but once the 900-foot level is reached, it is relatively easy going to the summit. A dotted line indicates the safest route to follow. Whenever rain falls and covers the bottom of the natural potholes on the top, a unique phenomena results. Tiny shrimp, like the one on the lower right, suddenly appear. And during their brief lifespan, they lay eggs which remain dormant until the next rain. They're a relic from the Precambrian era when the rock was at the bottom of a sea. The surface is truly incredible, undulated and corrugated. Ahead is the summit cairn, containing a ranger's book in which climbers verify a successful climb by signing their names. And such was the clarity of the air that the Olgas stood out boldly. Somehow, trees and bushes find enough nourishment to survive, even on the top of the rock. Most climbers do a round trip in 90 minutes, 60 up, 30 down. Descending is equally strenuous, and thighs may ache for several days from the stress of constantly putting on the brakes. Sufferers are easily identified. They're the ones going up and down stairs, side saddle. Coming down, some prefer backwards, sidewards, or frontwards. And then there are those who should never have attempted it. The secret is to set a comfortable pace and don't allow yourself to be provoked into going any faster than you're able. A dingo, the wild dog of Australia, looks on in bewilderment, wondering why anyone would want to climb the bloody big pebble, as the Aussies call it. If weather conditions are suitable, the changing colors of the rock at sunset can be stunning. And during a short period each year, the sun sets behind the Olgas, which are then outlined on the side of the rock. In many ways, Ayers Rock is symbolic of Australia. Only 20% is visible. And so Australia has only realized a small percentage of its potential. With its abundant resources, plentiful land, and resourceful people, it is truly one of the world's last frontiers. It is also a land standing on the threshold of the future, a land for tomorrow.